Hey there, welcome to today's episode. It's going to be a live unedited session. I just want to go through how I create gritty, custom drum racks using Ableton. Now I'm going to be using some hardware for this demonstration, but mainly just because I like working on the hardware and it looks better in the video. But all you really need is a copy of Ableton because we're making Ableton drum racks. You don't need the SP404 Mark II. You could swap that out for some plugins that you can apply like the RC20, something that's going to give you those kind of vinyl sim cassette feel. There's plenty of plugins that do that kind of stuff. If you do want to follow along exactly and you have the same bits of gear, my SP404 Mark II is plugged in via the USB-C cable, and inside of Ableton's preferences that is set as my audio interface, so my audio input and my audio output are both set to the SP. Creates like an audio loop, and that will make sense as we go through. It's a pretty cool little workflow. If you do own one of these, you don't even need a push 2, you just need an SP and Ableton to do that as well. So we need something to slice up. I like slicing up drum breaks. It's going to work really well. You can take those old drum breaks, chop them up, and we can make a new drum kit out of that. You can do it with one-shots as well if you're just thinking about putting custom kits together and maybe applying some effects to those samples beforehand, but we're going to use a break. So we're going to do clip, got a brand new audio track, clip and browse, and then we'll go to find a WAV file. Go to drums, and I have a dedicated breaks folder for vinyl drums. Go to stolen breaks. Okay, the first one's good enough. Let's just use that. It's a classic break. You know hip hop, you know that one. We've got one bar looped up to the project tempo, which is 61 BPM. I know just from ear that that is way slower than what we've got going on here. I reckon we're into the 80s, and Ableton is telling me it's 86.46. So 86 is going to be close enough. We can just click on the session view. Sounds good. If I want to do any sort of pitching of the drums, I would do it now. So I might pitch them down like 2 semitones, just make them feel a little bit kind of darker, moodier. And then we can send this through the SP to apply the effects that we want. So we're going to do Shift and Pad 16 on the SP so that I can show you my buses. I'm using bus 3 and 4 to apply 2 effects at the same time. The first one being the 303 vinyl sim. Just a small amount of compression, just lift the noise floor up a little bit. Just going to accentuate all that kind of recorded ambient noise from the original recording. We're also using a little bit of noise from the vinyl sim itself, but only 6, so just a small amount of that little staticky noise that it gives. I don't have any wow and flutter because I don't want a wavy, wonky feel to this. And if we move over to bus 4, I'm adding an equalizer as my second effect. This is going to be pretty subtle. I just want to beef up the drums, and you'll hear before and after. But we're doing a little low gain, tiny mid gain reduction, and a little boost in high gain. So 4, -2, and 6 if you really want to follow along. I'm going to exit that. I want to use push and enter and bus effects to turn this off and on. I want to make sure it's off so that we can quickly just A/B test again. This is before. Turn the effects on. Just gives them so much more life and so much more body. So that's the effect. You could have it from mild to wild. You could really, crusty up these drums and warp them and stuff. But we're just going to send that back through into Ableton. So we need to add a new track. I'm going to add an audio track and a default audio track. And then I'm going to go to mix. Now, if you see the mixer view, just press mix again. And you might need to click input and output to see your inputs and outputs. I know external in is what I want, channel 1 and 2, because my audio input device is the SP. So we know that's what's coming through. Monitoring is important though, because you're creating this audio loop. If you turn your monitor to auto or in and then you play this as you're recording, you're going to get a horrible feedback loop. So make sure it is set to out and off. We're going to arm the track to record because that's what we want to do, and shift just to change the color to something that will show up better on screen. This pink color is good. I'm going to go to clip view because then we can see it being recorded in real time. There'll probably be some latency due to Ableton and the way that it records through, but that's okay. We're only going to slice the drums up anyway, so I'm not going to be too fussy. Just press record. We've got 2 bars, but really for this episode, all I want is 1 bar. So we'll crop it down to 1 bar. I can see the latency there. We've got a bit of a gap. We could shift that over. You can play around with your start and end points, but it's going to be good enough just to chop out these drum sounds. One thing you need to do is make sure you turn the effect back off on the SP because we're using this as the audio interface, so we're doubling up on that effect. We go to push and enter and turn bus 3 and 4 off just to make sure that's not playing. We're going to convert our track now to a simpler so that we can slice it up. And I can delete the 2 tracks we're not using just to make sure it's nice and easy to follow. Inside of the simpler, we're going to move to slicing mode because we want to slice it up. And the other thing that's important and not to forget is that if you're going to convert this to a drum rack, if you want to convert it over, so it's going to take those individual hits that we slice up and put them into like separate little individual simplers. In mono mode, with playback set to mono, it puts them into a choke group, which is great for sample chops and your melodic stuff. I want to set it to poly though before I convert it, because I don't want them put into a choke group. I want to be able to play all of my drum samples, but be able to layer those. So if I've got a kick and a hi-hat, I want to be able to play those exactly at the same time. So we need to set it to poly before it's converted to a drum rack. The other thing quickly would just be to sort of tidy up in here. We're going to notes mode. We've got a couple of things that I'll probably delete out, slices that I don't want. Here in the middle, I can see this is a hi-hat sound, and it's kind of chopped it in the middle. Yeah, here. So what I want to do is delete, and I want to take that out. I don't want that in the middle there. That's going to be good enough though. Everything else will tidy up when we convert it to a drum rack. So we can convert and go to a drum rack. And the first one that we've got is this bit of dead space. I'm going to delete that out because we don't need it. I'm going to start with our kick drum. It's really just a case of tidying up start and end points now, making sure there's no clicks and pops and everything looks good. Kick drum looks good. Hi-hat's good. Yep, snare. This one here, just towards the end, looks a little bit like it's coming into the next transient, so I'll shift the endpoint over. Got this little short kick drum. I probably will delete that. I don't think I want that one. This next one's a good kick drum. I like that, but you can see we've got a problem at the end where it's moving into the next transient, so we're getting a click. Let's just shift that back. Next one sounds pretty good. Maybe just tweak the endpoint a little bit. This snare drum's the same, just pull it back a touch. And the same with our hi-hat. And this is also just like a bit of a dead slice at the end, so let's delete that. So now we've got all of the samples that we want for our kit. It's pretty good. One thing I would do, and I'm not going to do it for every pad just because it's a boring process, but I want to show you how to do it, is that when you zoom on these, you will notice that it's non-destructive editing. So for every pad, you still have access to the full original sample. Now that's fine, maybe you want to keep it there for some particular reason, but when I'm sending kits about, let's say I want to send this to a friend or something, I don't want to send them a really big file, so I like to crop everything down. Let's start with our kick drum, so I can show you this in real time. It's a little bit faffy, but you have to press slice, then you press slice again, then you press simpler, and then you press crop, which seems like a complete pain in the bum because it's a lot of buttons to press just to crop it down. But once you've done it once, if you move to the next pad, you'll notice simpler is already highlighted, so you just press simpler and then crop, and it does the same thing. And a final time, simpler is already here, so simpler and crop. It's not as painful as it seems at first. Just no point in me doing all of this as we're doing this demonstration just for the sake of it. You've seen how that works now. So now we're just into organization. The next thing I'm going to do is color code my samples for the types. In the last episode, I showed you about working on the push, just a general overview. When you start recording these drum samples and you've got like MIDI clips going, if you have separate colors for the drum sounds, it's just so much easier to work on the device. So I'm going to do that now and save it as part of the kit. We'll do shift, find our first one, which we know is a kick drum. I'm going to make that red. Then I'll just look for any other kick drums. So these two here, make those red. Then what else have we got? We got hi-hats. So those three are hi-hats, and for speed, I'll just leave them that color. So these two are our snares. We'll make those, I don't know, yellow. Doesn't matter. Now that we've done that, the final part is just to move over into Ableton. Unfortunately, you can't name on the device. You can technically save a preset here if you don't really care what the name of the preset is saved as. If you do shift, I think if you go to auto and then do shift and then press, audio, you will see we can save that as a preset. So we technically could save our drum rack here, but we're not going to do that. We're going to move over into the Ableton screen. So let me just jump over. Now that we're here inside of Ableton, hopefully you can see this clear enough. The first part would be shifting things around. Now, this is all personal preference. I know certain people, when you're doing finger drumming, you like your pads laid out however you want to lay them out. I personally just like a couple of kick drums next to each other, the hi-hats. So I would do that. This is my kick drum here. First one. I'm going to move that to the first pad. Look for another one. There's another kick drum. I could have that there. We've got a hi-hat next to it. Then we've got a snare, so I'll move the snare out of the way, find another hi-hat. This one will do. Then I'd put my snares probably just above. Looking for the other snare sound. And then the other two, I'm not really too bothered for this particular example. But 2 kick drums next to each other, 2 hi-hats and 2 snares. That's just kind of how I like to lay things out, but you can do whatever you like. I would then rename the pads so that it's very clear what's here. So if we rename, I'm not going to do all of these. We'll just quickly do that so that you can, see what's going on. Now, you can name from up here. So if we rename where it says slice, I can do kick. And you'll see, let's put kick on that pad. Just rename everything, kick 1, kick 2, however you want to call it so that you can remember it. Just be really nice and organized. Just means that when you boot this thing up every time you've made this custom drum kit, it's going to be a pleasure to use. So that is pretty much everything I would set up. I can then go to the little save icon and we can save this as whatever we like. So if I click on this, I could save this as, I don't know, vinyl kit, because I know it's from a vinyl break. Call it vinyl kit. And that's good to go. I can then pull this up whenever I want to use it. So we will leave it there. Hopefully you've learned something. It is really good to have a bunch of these kits at your disposal. You can pull them up anytime you want to just get started. And chopping up old breaks, you're just going to get some of that really nice gritty vinyl sound built in. Hope you've enjoyed it. I will see you guys in the next episode. Take care.